Hello, and welcome to the Vendor Engagement webinar for the Regional Educational Laboratories, or REL program. The 10 RELs conduct applied research and trainings with the mission of supporting a more evidence-based education system. I'm Erin Pollard, a project officer for the REL program, and I'm going to be serving as a moderator for this event. Today, we have 5 speakers. Michael Rivera from the Contracts and Acquisition Management Office is going to be giving an overview of the competition and key aspects of the proposal process and timeline. Then Liz Eisner, the Associate Commissioner for Knowledge Use, is going to be giving an overview of the REL program. Matt Solner, the Commissioner of the National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance, is going to be giving his vision for the next cycle of the REL program. And the REL team leads, Chris Boconfuso and Felicia Sanders, will be going through key elements of the performance work statement. After we hear from my colleagues, I will be back with reminders about the competition and next steps. Okay, Michael, off to you.
My name is Michael Rivera, and I'm a contract specialist with PCG CAM office, and I'm going to go over a few points with you. First, I just want to go over the points of contact for REL. Here's contact information for the contract officers on this requirement. Please direct any of your questions that you have to both Hope and Joseph. I ask that you please not contact any of the IES staff, REL program or otherwise, with any questions related to the acquisition. Even if you have a current REL contract, your cores may not provide technical direction regarding the current contract. They will not provide competition information. Competition information may only come from Joseph or Hope to safeguard the procurement process and make sure that we are all on a level playing field. Next slide. Today's webinar is pre-recorded for the benefit of those who will be unable to attend the live webinar. This recording will be archived on beta.sam.gov, which you will hear me refer to as BetaSam throughout this webinar. If you search for this solicitation by solicitation number, once you click on the opportunity, there will be a button to press that will allow you to follow the opportunity. This should give you a way to receive updates whenever the status of the solicitation changes. I also add this disclaimer. Any revisions to the performance work statement, evaluation factors, instructions to offerers, or any other aspect of this procurement that results from vendor feedback will be reflected in the final solicitation. The final solicitation controls, and I ask that you use information in the final solicitation as the official guidance when submitting a proposal. Next slide. On the RFI Response Information, we received several comments on the RFI generally and the capability statement specifically. Number 1, we do not specify formatting the capability statements, and we would like to do so now. We will post this to BetaSam as well. A, must be double-spaced, not single-spaced. B, standard margins. C, standard 12-point fonts. Number 2, people expressed a good amount of concern over what exactly we are going to do with the capability statements. We will not release the capability statements to the public. They are strictly for our own internal use. What is that? To determine whether small business set aside is appropriate for any of the 10 regions. Southwest is included in our market research, even though that competition will not kick off for another year. And I will speak to the timeline in Southwest specifically in a moment. We will not release our evaluation of capability statements to the public. Everything is internal and serves to inform our decisions regarding regional set-aside possibilities. Are you required to submit a capability statement in order to respond to the other elements of the RFI? Absolutely not. We strongly encourage you to submit a capability statement, but you are not required. You may respond to any element of the RFI, vendor questions, feedback on each document, or without submitting a capability statement. Number 4, who should submit a capability statement? Any offeror who is interested in a proposal, that is, you are a small business, I imagine that the subcontract arrangements are important to you. So it is probably in your best interest to include information on your proposed subcontractor arrangements to the extent that those arrangements impact or affect your overall capability and capacity. If you are a subcontractor and having discussions with the prime, you would not need to submit a capability statement unless you think there is a chance that you will propose a loan or as a prime. Next slide. On the acquisition timeline, we have a goal to provide some responses by the end of August 2020. Some questions may require additional consideration, but as a whole, we will group those questions that we can answer now and post to Beta SAM. This applies to both the technical questions that the IES team will be answering, as well as the acquisition questions that Hope and Joseph will be answering. We respond to as many questions as possible that were received by our original deadline of July 24th. We will also try to answer additional questions by the end of August, provided they are submitted soon. However, we cannot guarantee that questions received after the original July 24th deadline will be addressed. Several people asked about a draft request for proposals, RFP. We are not going to post a formal draft RFP. I'll note that the content that you received online contains the most important information about the question, except for the rating scale and proposed clauses and provisions. We will speak to the rating scale shortly. Our goal is to release the solicitation in February. That's not a guarantee. To keep informed about the status of the procurement, I will recommend that you utilize the follow function on Beta SAM. We anticipate that proposal evaluation and formal negotiation will occur beginning early spring 2021 and continuing through fall 2021. We will be awarding these contracts with FY21 funds, but that does not necessarily mean that you will not know if you are successful prior to the commencement of FY21. Next slide. On the current REL competition, 9 regions in REL Southwest region competition, I'd like to say that REL Southwest is 11 months off cycle as compared to the other 9 REL contracts. There was a protest in 2012 when the current contracts were awarded, and the department stopped work on the REL Southwest region while the parties resolved the protests. This took about 11 months. The Education Sciences Reform Act, ESRA, requires all REL or REL contracts to be 60 months, 5 years. There's no way for us to reduce the duration of Southwest or shorten Southwest in FY21 or FY22 competition to get everything back on cycle. How are we handling this, and how will the current competition affect the Southwest competition in 2022? All of the market research, vendor engagement, and vendor feedback efforts that we are conducting now also applies to later Southwest competition. This will obviously change if a change in legislation compels a change. But for the moment, you should assume that the Southwest acquisition will follow the same form as this acquisition, meaning a similar PWS, instructions, evaluation criteria, etc. Next slide. On the contract structure, let's talk about the proposed contract structure. Under the Education Services Reform Act, ESRA, IES must award contracts to each of the 10 REL regions. These are not grants. A contract is a legally binding document whereby one party promises to do something in return for, in this case, money, and there are strict repercussions for failure to perform, and the government is heavily involved in oversight and management. A grant operates as a transfer of money to accomplish a public purpose with limited government involvement in different default provisions. This competition is not a grant competition, and the procurement process for a federal contract is very different from a discretionary grant competition. The current REL contracts are hybrid, which has some fixed price tasks and some cost reimbursement tasks with a cost reimbursement travel line item. So travel is reimbursable for your actuals. What's changing? We are no longer doing RELs as hybrid contracts. RELs will be cost plus fixed fee with a cost reimbursement travel line. Next slide. On a proposal submission and evaluation, an important note on REL funding and another disclaimer to pay very, very close attention to the instructions to offerers on this matter. REL program allocation is determined by Congress. Congress gives the RELs an annual appropriation anticipated to be in line with our current year funding. Of that funding, we expect $50.643 million per year reserved for distribution across 10 contractors for REL program work. This means that we expect you to use every dollar that is allocated for your region. In traditional procurements, there's an interplay between your technical approach and your price. This is called best value. Here we are concerned with the quality of work that you are going to propose within the context of your regional allocation. Proposing a lower price is not an advantage in a REL competition. Regarding submissions, we are only accepting electronic proposals via email. We will not request or accept physical proposals in lieu of electronic proposals. Senior business directors, company executives, please pay close attention to this. We will not accept late proposals. If your proposal arrive at 1 minute after the deadline, your proposal is late. Let me repeat that. If your proposal arrives at 1 minute after the deadline, your proposal is late. Please do not submit multiple volumes via email 5 minutes before the deadline. Submit hours before. Submit the night before. Please pay close attention to our information regarding mailbox size restrictions and account for internet outages, delays, network latency, and other technical factors that may delay receipt of your proposal. Please do not forfeit the opportunity to win a contract worth tens of millions of dollars because of an email problem. Please read the RFI and instructions to offerers very closely, as there have been quite a few changes from the last RELs competition. Liz Eisner will be following me. Thank you so much for your attention.
Hello, my name is Liz Eisner, and I'm the Associate Commissioner for the Knowledge Use Division of the National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance, or NCEE. The REL program is one of 4 programs in the Knowledge Use Division. The purpose of this section of the webinar is to provide an overview of the major substantive portions of the draft performance work statement that are included in the request for information. In this part of the webinar, we will not repeat or summarize all of the information in the RFI or in the draft PWS. Please refer to that document for additional details. In addition, we will not have a chance to answer all of the questions that have been posted by vendors thus far. Written answers will be provided and posted on betasam.gov. During my brief remarks, I will provide some background on the Regional Educational Laboratory Program, or the REL program, as we commonly refer to it. As implied previously, the REL program is administered by the Knowledge Use Division of NCEE at the Institute of Education Sciences in the U.S. Department of Education. The purpose of each REL is to assist practitioners and policymakers in their work to improve outcomes for learners from early childhood to adulthood by supporting stakeholders in the generation and use of research, evidence, and evidence-based practices. To achieve that purpose, the RELs engage in 3 main activities. First, they conduct applied research and development. Second, they design and implement training, coaching, and technical support activities that emphasize building capacity to use data and information to drive change. And third, they disseminate scientifically valid research, evidence-based practices, and supporting materials that allow stakeholders to apply this knowledge to their own practice. It's very important to note that all REL work must be both rigorous and high leverage. By rigorous, we mean that REL research and development activities meet IAS's standards for work that is scientifically valid. REL training, coaching, technical assistance, and dissemination activities are rigorous when they are based on practices that are evidence-based and designed and delivered in ways that are consistent with what is known about high-quality adult learning and educator professional development experiences. REL work is high leverage when it is change-oriented, and it supports consequential local, regional, or statewide decisions about policies, programs, and practices designed to improve learner outcomes. Matt Soldner, the Commissioner for NCEE, will now talk about some of the major themes for the next REL contract cycle.
Good morning. As Liz said, my name is Matt Soldner, and I'm the Commissioner for the National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance, and I'm pleased to add my virtual welcome to you today. The REL program is a critical element in the U.S. Department of Education's strategy to support state and local education agencies, colleges and universities, community-based organizations, and parents and families, as each work in their own ways to improve outcomes for students. Before my colleagues highlight major components of the draft PWS, I'd like to mention a few expectations we have for the work in REL 2022. First, the purpose of the RELs is to improve student outcomes for the better. As a result, it's our absolute expectation that at the end of each REL's 5-year plan of work, conditions on the ground will be changed in such a way as to yield improved outcomes for students. Improved outcomes are the ends of the REL's work. Required and optional tasks in the PWS are simply the means. RELs and the program as a whole will not be judged on how many reports you release or TA projects you deliver. It will be judged on the extent to which it contributed to a process of change that made a positive contribution to the lives of students and their communities. Second, the work of the RELs will be done in partnership with educators, education leaders, relevant organizations, and community members. No REL can be successful without deep and sustained engagement with its stakeholders. I would urge you to read the program's authorizing legislation, in particular the section on governing boards. In it, you will see a vision for how the work of each REL was meant not only to be informed by stakeholder needs, but driven by the stakeholders themselves. The literature on partnerships between researchers, practitioners, and communities is rich with suggestions on how this work can best be done. Read it, and then propose a way of working that is outcomes-oriented, change-driven, and culturally responsive. As you develop your theory of how your work with partnerships will bring about change, I encourage you to think about how you scope those partnerships to achieve maximum impact. As you will note in the draft PWS, we suggest offerers consider the relative trade-offs of breadth versus depth in their work. In general, our assumption is that focusing more narrowly will allow you to invest the time and the resources needed to truly support your partners in moving the needle. Similarly, we strongly suggest you form partnerships with reasonably sized geographies, typically within a single state. State policy contexts are such that working to effect change in multiple states simultaneously can dilute precious resources. This doesn't mean, of course, that what's learned in one state shouldn't be broadly shared within your region, but you may wish to consider a plan of work that includes relatively more intensive, state-focused partnerships, as well as relatively less intensive regional communities of practice. Finally, please be aware of the expertise that we expect you to bring to the work. Changing any human system is challenging. Changing education systems, which quite literally shape the future of our nation, is challenging almost beyond imagination. And that's the work we expect you to do. And not only do we expect you to demonstrate the capacity to change systems, we expect you to be able to build and use rigorous evidence in service of changing them. Consider then the skill set of the team we expect you to build to successfully execute this work. It includes the ability to design, execute, and analyze rigorous experimental and quasi-experimental research, and develop practitioner-facing tools based on those studies. The ability to communicate the results of research to a statistician and a pre-service teacher with equal facility. The ability to support a senior leader in a state education agency, transforming their organization, as well as the ability to help early childhood educators form a small community of practice on a specific classroom topic, and the ability to build and shepherd coalitions towards achieving some of their most important goals, the ones they hold for their children. Importantly, these challenges can be met because we know this kind of expertise and these kinds of skills exist. They can be found in single firms and firms in combination, in small firms and large firms, and in firms both known and unknown to us. So thank you for listening today and for your interest in the REL program. As I hope you can see, we have high hopes for REL 2022. We welcome all offers to the competition and look forward to receiving your questions about the program. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues to walk through the performance work statement.
Thank you, Matt. My name is Chris Boconfuso, and I've been a project officer for the REL program for the past 9 years. The performance work statement, or PWS, for the REL 2022 cycle entails 6 tasks. I'm here today to talk about the first 4 of these tasks. Task 1 of the REL 2022 cycle is REL Management and Reporting. This task covers a variety of administrative and reporting activities that are required of REL contractors. These include regularly scheduled phone and video meetings with your project officer, in-person attendance for meetings with department personnel, monthly written progress reports, periodic data submissions related to the department's strategic objectives, and ensuring REL staff in positions requiring security clearance gain the necessary clearance level and are compliant with department security policies. I also want to note that we will be providing additional information on security clearance requirements for REL contractor personnel by the end of August. I want to call out 2 specific subtasks under Task 1. As required by the Education Sciences Reform Act, or ESRA, REL contractors shall identify, establish, maintain, and convene a governing board under subtask 1.5. The governing board plays a key part in the work of the REL. Roles of governing board members include identifying and sharing the needs of education constituency with which they represent, providing strategic guidance on how the REL carries out its activities for maximum effectiveness and efficiency towards addressing regional needs, reducing unnecessary or redundant activities, and increasing collaboration and resource sharing across the region. REL governing board members are also expected to leverage their connections within the region to amplify products developed by the RELs and the What Works Clearinghouse to relevant stakeholders or organizations. It is the role of the REL to ensure that the governing board members clearly understand their roles, responsibilities, and the governing board procedures. RELs are required to ensure governing board members are consistently kept up to date on REL activities in order to maximize the time available during twice annual governing board meetings for governing board members to effectively fulfill their roles. Governing board members shall be separate from the contractor's corporate board, represent the interests of all states and other appropriate constituencies in the region, include a diversity of expertise and experience, including education researchers, administrators, teachers, and individuals representing the interests of learners in both rural and urban economically disadvantaged areas, as well as other underserved learners. Each chief state school officer in the region must be provided with an opportunity to serve on the REL governing board or to designate a personal representative to serve. Please refer to Section 174 of ESRA for additional requirements on the composition of REL governing boards. REL contractors are also required to submit an annual plan and annual progress report under subtask 1.6. The annual plan details the REL's current understanding of stakeholder needs and the REL's technical approach to providing services to the region, as well as a detailed budget and staff time commitments for the upcoming period. Starting in year 2, the plan shall also include an annual progress report that includes assessment of regional needs, assessments of current year activities, and progress towards meeting short and medium-term outcomes for each set of projects done in partnership, as well as lessons learned from collaborating and coordinating with partners. I encourage you to read the requirements for annual plans and annual progress reports in the PWS closely, as we expect a wide range of detailed information to be included in each document. Please note that successful offerers shall use the plan included in their proposal to inform an updated annual plan, which is due within 12 weeks of the contract effective date and will cover the first 18 months of the contract. Finally, please note that there is a list of required deliverables for work under each task at the end of that task description in the PWS. RELs and IES may negotiate on a project-by-project basis to add deliverables outside of these lists at the time the REL proposes a new project. Task 2 covers coordination and collaboration between RELs and beyond the REL program to other U.S. Department of Education funded centers and technical assistance entities. Key purposes for coordination and collaboration between programs are to share and synthesize information, ideas, and lessons learned, to enable each type of provider to focus on its designated role, to ensure the work is non-duplicative, to streamline and simplify service provision to states and districts, and to collaborate on projects as needed to better support regional stakeholders. Under subtask 2.1, each REL will be responsible for developing, coordinating, reporting, and promoting REL activities on one non-overlapping topic in education, or leadership area, as we call it, that both regional and national importance. Work in this subtask is intended to strengthen and leverage the knowledge and experience across the REL program on a topic, increase collaboration and coordination across the RELs, and generate collaborative projects and on the leadership area topic that benefit the REL program and education stakeholders broadly. After contract award, IES shall identify one leadership area for each REL. After being assigned a topic, the REL shall lead quarterly cross-REL working group meetings for their leadership area and shall coordinate the design and execution of activities such as webinars and conference presentations and the development of products such as infographics and memos with other RELs. Offerers should note that while we provide examples of the products and activities that could be developed within leadership areas in the PWS, this is not an exhausted list. Subtask 2.2 covers REL participation in the leadership area working groups led by other RELs. RELs are expected to participate in each working group area for which they are not leading. Please see the PWS for a more detailed discussion of requirements under these two subtasks. Subtask 2.3 is intended to support REL coordination and collaboration with the Department of Education's comprehensive centers, other Department of Education technical assistance providers, and IES investments funded through the Whatworks Clearinghouse, National Center for Education Research, and National Center for Special Education Research. RELs are required to focus on these activities that leverage their distinctiveness in the federal assistance space and develop strategies for collaboration with other federal service providers to meet the needs that lie outside the REL's core competencies. The PWS includes specific requirements related to the REL's collaboration and coordination with their counterparts in the comprehensive centers. We expect RELs and regional comprehensive centers to have consistent coordination and collaboration throughout the REL contract period based on the synergy between the shared goals and the distinctive competencies of the RELs and the comprehensive centers. Task 3 of the REL program PWS entails developing partnerships with stakeholders and maintaining these partnerships. As noted in the expectations for the implementation of the REL program section of PWS, RELs shall develop and conduct all applied research, training, coaching, and technical support work in partnership with the types of stakeholders the work is intended to serve using the most effective structure possible. While no single form or function of partnership is prioritized in the 2022 REL cycle, work done in partnership will require time and effort to develop and support. These efforts are captured under Task 3. Subtask 3.1 covers need sensing and partnership development activities. Through the duration of the contract, the REL shall engage in need sensing through communication with stakeholders in its region and through secondary information sources such as state and district websites. It is through need sensing and communication with stakeholders that the REL projects are informed, proposed, and ultimately executed in partnership. In other words, need sensing and partnership is how the RELs ensure that all of their proposed work is high leverage and has a demonstrable, credible, and direct relationship to improve learner outcomes. Subtask 3.1 also covers the development of partnership proposals, a logic model or equivalent that outlines how the REL's activities will lead to the attainment of partners' intended outcomes in the short, medium, and long term, and a measurement plan to help determine progress towards an achievement of each target associated with a logic model outcome. Ongoing monitoring of a REL's performance will be informed in part by its attainment of targets associated with short-term and medium-term outcomes of each partnership's logic model. Summative evaluation of a REL's performance will be informed in part by the attainment of targets associated with long-term outcomes. Please refer to the PWS for additional information on this subtask. Subtask 3.2 supports the maintenance of partnerships established under 3.1. RELs shall use this subtask to support ongoing need sensing with partners, convene meetings with partners that are not specific to a single ongoing project, and regularly communicate with partners to move the REL work forward towards its intended outcomes. The logic models and associated measurement plans developed under subtask 3.1 are to be considered living documents that change as conditions warrant. Efforts towards maintaining or updating logic models and measurement plans originally developed under subtask 3.1 should be included under subtask 3.2. Subtask 3.3 supports the establishment and maintenance of communities of practice for stakeholders within the REL's region. Please note that this subtask is optional. A REL contractor may decide not to propose a community of practice during the contract period. Because the subtask is optional, offerers may not include any information on this subtask in their proposal's technical plan. Subtask 4.1 supports training, coaching, and technical support for TCTS for evidence use. REL program's TCTS projects and activities leverage REL's unique experience in designing and interpreting rigorous research, as well as identification and application of evidence-based practices. Under this subtask, RELs shall identify, develop, and implement training, coaching, and technical support projects and activities that build and support partners' individual and organizational knowledge and capacities in service of addressing high-leverage issues. Like all REL projects, TCTS projects and activities shall be co-developed with partners. TCTS activities are more intensive than activities under other tasks, such as conference presentations or one-off webinars under the dissemination task. Training in the REL context involves hands-on, direct guidance or instruction from experts in research or practice. The PWS includes several examples of training activities, such as virtual trainings for administrators or teacher leaders on applying evidence from a What Works Clearinghouse practice guide to professional development or practice. Coaching in the REL context is like being a thought partner, a critical friend to a small group of partners during the process of these partners making a high-leverage decision on policy or practice. Coaching supports partners' decision-making processes through ongoing sessions covering extant research evidence or current practice related to a specific topic. Technical support activities in the REL context are intended to build partners' capacities to perform research-related activities, such as identifying, collecting, analyzing, and visualizing data. As with training and coaching, we have provided examples of this work in the PWS, such as providing support to a research office within the SEA or LEA to help identify and collect district data necessary for that office to evaluate the impact of an existing program. While we provide examples of TCTS throughout the description of subtask 4.1 in the scope of work and requirements section, I want to emphasize that these are examples and not an exhaustive list of potential TCTS supports that RELs may provide. They represent a fraction of what might be possible through this subtask. We encourage offerers to propose and design TCTS activities that are informed by partners' needs and by the context within which they work. The PWS also includes detailed information on the development, quality assurance, and dissemination of TCTS created under subtask 4.1. Subtask 4.2 outlines a new service, Ask an Expert, intended to build methodological expertise and evidence-based thought partnering to key stakeholders within a relevant region on a rolling basis. Ask an Expert services will be designed to address time-sensitive questions from key regional stakeholders that can be answered using REL's evidence-based subject matter expertise or expertise in designing and performing research studies. Responses to key stakeholders using the service can be in writing or through a phone or video conference. Requests directly related to the interpretation or implementation of a policy or practice, requests where there are no directly relevant extant research to guide expert responses, requests for discussions or presentations to a large group of stakeholders, or requests that would require more than 2 meetings to fulfill should not be addressed through this service and may be better fulfilled through a different REL task or outside the REL program. The PWS includes additional information on the requirements for and implementation of this service. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Felicia Sanders for the discussion of tasks 5 and 6.
Thanks, Chris. Hello, my name is Felicia Sanders, and I'm a project officer for the REL program. I'm going to provide a brief overview of task 5, which is applied research and peer-reviewed research-based development projects, and task 6, which is dissemination. Applied research is the key features of the REL program. The purpose of this task is to conduct applied research and report relevant findings and to develop peer-reviewed products that are based in rigorous research, be it original or extant. Although this is a standalone task, it is essential that the REL work in partnership with policymakers and practitioners to develop a cohesive set of activities. The publication of a research report should never be an isolated event. Applied research combined with dissemination and TCTS supports before, during, and after report publication are more likely to lead to the fulfillment of the partnership's desired outcomes than a single research report without wraparound activities or services. For the purposes of this presentation, I will only address subtasks 5.1 and 5.3. Let's begin with subtask 5.1, conduct original applied research. As with all REL projects, applied research undertaken by RELs shall include a strong justification for the relevance and rigor of the proposed work. Applied research shall be designed to to both inform short-term, high-leverage policy decisions or help build knowledge towards future decisions by practitioners and policymakers. The audience for all research projects must be clear, specific, and appropriate with respect to the intended outcomes of the project. Producing high-quality, rigorous, peer-reviewed research takes time and care, both on the part of our contractors and IES. For that reason, all research project proposals and final products go through a rigorous review process. Offers are urged to review Appendix A of the instructions to offers in the RFI. It outlines the review process for research proposals and reports. We also encourage offers to help potential partners understand the timelines to help manage their expectations. Additionally, it should be clear in the stakeholder letters that partners understand the timeline and essential milestones for research projects, such as requirements for data collection, whether it be administrative data or an original data collection. While all final products will be peer-reviewed, we plan to be flexible regarding the type of product that contractors prepare for their partners. Contractors and their partners might believe a traditional 15-page report is most appropriate. If contractors go that route, a one-page snapshot of the report is also required. Contractors may also prepare a 4-page companion piece, but that is optional. Alternatively, contractors and their partners might decide that a PowerPoint or an infographic is the most appropriate final product, which is fine too. In that case, contractors will need to produce a supporting memo that provides detailed documentation of the research study's methodology, including data and limitations. Subtask 5.3 describes the requirement to develop toolkits based on What Works Clearinghouse practice guides to support educators' use of evidence-based practices. This is a new REL requirement. The department is invested in developing practitioner-friendly toolkits to help educators use evidence-based practices in the classroom, from preschool through post-secondary settings. Some of the best evidence available is consolidated in What Works Clearinghouse, or as we refer to it, WWC, practice guides, in which researchers and practitioners review the evidence from the most rigorous studies available, develop recommendations for practice, and create action steps for how to use the recommended practices. To help this evidence get into the hands of educators of all levels, RELs will partner with educators to develop toolkits, which shall include all materials necessary for effective implementation. Each REL shall develop at least one toolkit based on one or more of the recommendations from a WWC practice guide. In Appendix C, in the instructions to offers, the department provides each region with 3 practice guide options to choose from. All toolkits based on WWC practice guides focused on elementary or secondary learners shall be co-developed with at least one school or district level partner. Toolkits based on WWC practice guides focused on post-secondary learners shall be co-developed with at least one institute of higher education. Other partners and content experts may be included as well. One additional note about practice guides. Practice guides present a set of recommendations in which all recommendations should be implemented to achieve the intended outcomes, while other practice guides may be implemented independently of the other ones. RELs must consider whether recommendations are a package of practices or a single recommendation can be implemented to achieve the intended goal when developing the toolkit. Toolkits in Subtask 5.3 also require 2 forms of evaluation. First, RELs must formatively evaluate the usability of the tool with its intended audience during development. The formative evaluation is a component of the toolkit development phase under Subtask 5.3. Secondly, RELs must evaluate the efficacy and implementation fidelity of the finished toolkit's professional development resources, either individually in related subsets or as a whole under Subtask 5.1 prior to the toolkit's release by IES. Such an evaluation should at minimum examine short-term outcomes for both teachers and learners. This evaluation should also indicate ways that the toolkit can be improved to be more usable or effective. Please note that the K-12 schools or institutes of higher education that partner with the successful offerer to develop the toolkit and participate in the usability testing may not participate in the subsequent efficacy and implementation fidelity study. Finally, RELs and their partners need to plan creatively and strategically when designing the toolkit evaluation, especially with regard to the efficacy study. For example, evaluations may not be able to use state assessments as an outcome measure because the assessment timeframe may not align with the teacher's use of the toolkit, or it may not be available in time for RELs to analyze the data to include in a report. Instead, RELs may consider relying on another type of assessment that will provide the necessary data in a timely fashion. RELs may consider all manner of evaluation methods, approaches, including rapid cycle evaluations, traditional randomized controlled trials, interrupted time series, and Bayesian analyses, as long as the REL sufficiently justifies the methods they propose to use. Both the design, including usability testing, and evaluation of the toolkit must be completed within the 5-year contract period. For that reason, the toolkit must be one that the REL and its intended partners theorize could produce positive results if implemented in a short time frame. The toolkit must be developed on a timeline that would allow for the evaluation report to be submitted to IES no later than September 2025. Now I'd like to provide you with an overview of the review process for the toolkit proposal and the toolkit evaluation. The toolkit proposal will be submitted with the contract proposal. It will be reviewed by IES during the contract competition, and the successful offer will be expected to begin work on the toolkit immediately after award. The first step will be having the subject matter expert review the toolkit proposal, and then the REL will resubmit to IES. The toolkit proposals do not require peer review, as the toolkit will be developed based on a practice guide, which is a peer-reviewed IES publication. As you can see, the toolkit, the evaluation proposal, and the evaluation report is also required to receive subject matter expert review. This will happen before those deliverables are submitted for IES review. And once IES reviews, the deliverables will be reviewed by our REL peer review contract. The review of these deliverables follows a similar timeline as other research proposals and reports described in subtask 5.1. Even though the draft toolkit evaluation proposal will be submitted as part of the REL contract proposal, the successful offerer will have an opportunity to revise the evaluation proposal post-award, as the offerer will need to identify an evaluation partner and potentially make other changes that can only be determined post-award. One final note on the toolkit and the evaluation. Offerers may propose to submit sections of the toolkit for review at different times. The incremental submission shall be justified in the proposal. Additionally, the offerer proposed to evaluate the sections of the toolkit at different times. Again, sufficient justification of that approach should be included in the proposal. Before moving on to Task 6, I'd like to talk about Task 5, Quality Assurance Procedures. The REL shall establish a process for ensuring that the work of the REL is of the highest quality and that all published products will meet IES review standards for rigor, relevance, quality, clarity, and plain language. The REL shall ensure that personnel with appropriate cultural understanding, content knowledge, and methodological expertise will conduct careful reviews of research proposals and products before they are submitted to the core. As part of the REL's quality assurance procedures, contractors shall propose an external subject matter expert whose sole role within the project will be to advise the project team on the design and content of applied research and development projects, except projects under subtask 5.6. The subject matter expert must be external to the project, but can be an employee of the prime, an employee of a subcontractor, or a consultant. They may not work on the project or a set of closely related projects for which they act as a subject matter expert. The subject matter expert must have content and technological expertise related to the Task 5 project. The REL may decide to identify 2 subject matter experts for the project if someone with both content and methodological expertise is not available to serve in this role. RELs must propose experts and provide documentation of their expertise relevant to the project for approval before submitting a proposal for an applied research project. The REL shall also submit memos along with the proposal and product submissions outlining the expert's feedback on proposals and products and the REL's response to the expert's feedback. Finally, we want to share just a few comments about Task 6 dissemination. The purpose of the dissemination task is to enable education partners and stakeholders to learn about and identify ways to apply the most up-to-date research in education to high-leverage issues of policy and practice. Therefore, work under this task includes disseminating the results of REL work, as well as the results of peer-reviewed research not conducted by the REL. To accomplish the goals of the dissemination task, REL shall craft a dissemination strategy for their products based on their partners' needs and intended outcomes. The REL shall work with their partners to target their work to the specific audiences of interest, particularly those best positioned to help the partnerships realize their intended outcomes. Additionally, the REL shall disseminate research in a way that policymakers and educators can leverage it and apply it to their context. This involves crafting tailored messages and communication strategies to reach specific audiences. Products developed under this task should be designed to provide engaging experiences that draw in new audiences and engage existing ones. RELs are also expected to leverage the work of the entire REL program and the department's investments in education research to help policymakers and educators benefit from those federally funded resources. Finally, I'd like to highlight one contractual change from the current contract. REL contractors are currently responsible for the development work of the website, actually writing code in the IES development site. For the REL 2022 cycle, each REL will have a dedicated regional website. However, REL contractors are only required to create website content. A separate website contract will handle the actual development work. So thank you for your time, and now I'm going to pass it back to our moderator, Erin, to close out this vendor engagement session.
Alicia, we hope you found this vendor engagement webinar to be informative. Please remember to submit capability statements if interested and any questions about this opportunity. And please remember to watch beta.sam.gov for updates to this solicitation. Thank you.